All right. All right, I'm going to get started because you just missed the intro of me. So that's the least interesting part. So I'm going to get going and allow folks to continue to come in as they will. So my name is David Harris. I'm the 19th president of Union College here in Schenectady, New York. Schenectady, New York, Union College in the hockey world, often associated with the 2014 NCAA championship, Division I, won by Union College in that year. But many other great things about the school. Hockey's one, liberal arts college since 1795, engineering, computer science, so forth. But tonight, we want to talk hockey. In fact, we want to talk about growing the game. So let me give a little bit of intro. Let me have my colleagues introduce themselves, and then we'll open it up. So it's some of you may think it's a little strange. It's Black History Month, and we decided to do an event on hockey. Not exactly what usually comes to mind when you think an event for Black History Month. And that's exactly why we're doing this, because the world is changing. It has changed, and we want to see it change even more. And so I'll just give the background sketch. So I grew up in the 70s, loved sports. I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me playing hockey in the 1970s. And that's probably part of, along with finances, why I didn't ever play the game as a young person. But of course, things have changed. And some evidence of that change occurred in August of 2022, when in back-to-back weeks, Union College hired 2 new outstanding assistant coaches who have had a tremendous impact on their players who I talk to. I love seeing them at the games. And they both happen to be African-Americans, Lennie Childs and Olivia Soares. So at the time, there were only 5 African-American coaches in all of college hockey. And 2 of them were at Union. And so it got us thinking, Lennie, Olivia, others, what's their story? Who else can we get involved in a conversation to talk about how it is that the kids of today have opportunities that maybe the kids of the past didn't have, and how the kids of tomorrow will have even more. So that's the idea of this group. And again, I really appreciate my colleagues coming together for this conversation. So let me ask them, I'll go in order here on my screen, ask them to introduce themselves a little bit, and then we'll get going. Thanks for joining us. You can put questions in the Q&A, and we will get to as many of those as we can. So Lennie, you want to kick us off, a little intro about yourself?
For sure. And if I could start, I'd love to, on behalf of the Union family, we lost a staple in our community, in our hockey community, Paul Gerard, last week with a long battle of cancer. So I want to just send a heartfelt condolences to his family, friends, and he was a mentor of mine in my hockey career, coaching career, amongst many others, I'm guaranteed. And it's sort of ironic that we're having this during Black History Month, and we lost someone who paved the way and definitely was a role model for what exactly we're talking about here. And just want everyone to know we're thinking about him and his family at this difficult time. And my name is Lennie Childs, first year assistant coach here with the men's hockey program at Union. Super honored to be here. And prior to this, I was in Des Moines in the USHL. And in Janesville in the North American Hockey League as a coach. And then I'm from Silver Spring, Maryland, just about 10 minutes outside of Washington, D.C., played my youth hockey there, had the opportunity to move out to Wisconsin to play for the Janesville Jets in the North American Hockey League, and then continue my college career at Concordia, Wisconsin out there before I started my professional career. So it's great to be with you guys on the Zoom.
Excellent. Thanks, Lennie. Olivia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Soares. This is my first year at Union College as well with the women's ice hockey team. I grew up around the Boston area in West Roxbury, so just a little bit outside of Boston. I went to a boarding school in Newport, Rhode Island called St. George's. I started playing hockey around 4th grade, so it was a little late to it. But once I got in, enjoyed it. Went to boarding school at St. George's, like I said, and then was very fortunate, got to play Division I hockey at The Ohio State University from 2016 to 2020, and had the opportunity to grow the program there. And now coached my first year at Colby College last year in a D3 school in Maine, and enjoying every second of being here at Union College, and very appreciative of this opportunity for us to get together and kind of talk about some very important topics and share our experiences in that realm.
Excellent. Thanks, Olivia. Guy.
Well, good evening, and thank you everybody for joining. David, thank you and the team for putting this together. I'm fired up. I'm really excited. I'm inspired, and we haven't gotten into this detail. Guy Logan, I graduated from Union in the class of 1990. I played all 4 years. I was had the honor of serving as captain my junior and senior year. I couldn't make it to the show, the NHL, to seek the Holy Grail. So I coached for 2 more years at Union while I got my MBA. So thank you again for this opportunity. Look forward to having a hearty discussion.
Thanks. And of course, in addition to many other things, Guy serves on our board of trustees as well. So I could see a lot of Guy, which is a good thing. Meredith.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for having me in college. I'm excited to be here. Again, my name is Meredith Lang. I am the founder of Mosaic Hockey Collective. We are out of Minnesota. We have about 80 plus boys and girls in our organization, and we are just here to create positive experiences as well as access and resources to the best sport on earth, which is hockey. I never thought I would be in this hockey space, though I did play a little bit in high school, but I ran track in college and I thought I was going to have track phenoms, and kids just tell you otherwise. And they said at 6 they wanted to play hockey. So here I am, just charging away and trying to create some trailblazers in hockey.
Thank you, Meredith. And Jeff.
Yeah, first off, good evening, President Harris and Union College. Thank you for allowing this opportunity. I think it's amazing whenever we have an opportunity like this to be able to talk about the history of our contribution within this country, but then also doing it in the same lens of hockey. It's amazing. I'm excited. Guy, I match your energy, brother, man. I love it. And I'm so excited to share this space with you. But yes, Jeff Scott, I'm the Vice President of Community Development and Growth for the National Hockey League. I'm laughing at Olivia at saying that she started hockey at a tender age of 4, but said she was late to start playing hockey. I grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida, and I love sharing the story of me playing hockey in Florida is like trying to find a polar bear in the desert. And it was not an option for me. I've been working in professional sports now for over 20 years. I was actually a college football and baseball player, but made the transition over to the NHL side of the business about 8 years ago after spending 12, 13 plus years on the NBA and NFL side of the business. And I made that transition over to the hockey space for exactly what we're talking and having this conversation right now. And we'll dig deeper into about creating access opportunities so we can have more trailblazers and leaders like how we have on this call right now, where we're talking about coaches, where we're talking about presidents, where we're talking about business leaders in general. We have to think about what that next generation is. And if we can do that through the sport of hockey, I think we're doing something special. So I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. I'm excited to be a part of this movement. The NHL is committed to making sure that we continue to grow the game and make sure that it's as diverse as the communities where our organizations and our leagues operate. And our future is bright as long as we continue having these courageous conversations. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you all. This is exciting. So let's talk about background. So I'll just mention quick comments. So I told you I didn't play hockey early, but I actually did play in a men's league for 5 years, starting at age 35. So I got a little taste, nothing like you folks. But I will also tell you my biggest challenge being Union College president is when I go to those games, I see Lennie, I see Olivia, I see the players, is I have to remember I'm not just a hockey fan, I'm the president. So that is a real challenge for me. I'll let you know. So tell me about your background in hockey. So tell me about who introduced you to the game. How did this happen? Anyone wants to kick it off? Let's start with Guy, maybe. So Guy was in Canada, so I assume it was just in the air, right, Guy?
It's in the air. To your point, there weren't a lot of players that looked like me. However, when you pick up a sport and you're a kid, you play it because you're passionate about it and you enjoy it. And Windsor's across the border from Detroit, Michigan, and hockey's the game. And I just try to hold a wide array of sports, which nowadays is kind of like an anomaly because you got to specialize at the age of maybe 5, Olivia. I'm not sure, but I just had passion for the game and stuck with it. But one of the things I'm going to pick up on the point that you made, I did have an opportunity to meet someone that looked like me. And that player was Tony McKechnie. And that type of experience, and I'm sure you've heard this adage, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So if there was probably one point in my career where I thought, hey, I could get there, right? Here's this guy, Tony McKechnie, and at the time I met him, I remember this like yesterday. He played for the Kingston Canadians. He subsequently went on to play for the Buffalo and many other teams, Chicago, etc. But when you can connect with someone that happens to look like you in the game that you love, it could be transcendent. And that was really instrumental to me. And thinking about this conversation at heart, being able to, number one, have as many people come out and hear this discussion, but just being able to see that there are other people that happen to look like you can make a heck of a difference. Now, that's not to suggest I wouldn't be sitting here if all shades of the ethnic rainbow did not help me, weren't helpful in furthering my career. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that.
Excellent, thanks. Who else? Olivia, I was doing a little research for this at a recent game, and I ended up talking to your mom and your sister. You're thinking, uh-oh. And so I heard that, as you said, you picked up in 4th grade. I heard that, you weren't even a skater early on. So how'd you end up in hockey?
4th grade is correct. If it was 4 or 5, I definitely wouldn't go with early. I think my teammates would always say that they started around that age when they were babies. They had skates on, which I think is just incredible. But I had a friend and he played hockey, and I still didn't know much about it. My family, I think, is still learning about the game. They attend a lot, but they're still learning as well. And I went to one of his practices one day and just watching, his dad came up and sprayed snow at me at the door. I was standing right at the door to the ice, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I definitely wanted to try it. And so my sister used to have Friday night free skates, and she probably still is mad at me for this, but I'm sure she mentioned it to you as well. I used to tag along when it was like her middle school social hour of Friday night free skates, and I had on a big snowboarding helmet, and I was doing hot laps around the rink while she was trying to hang out with her friends. So I just, again, like we talked about, it fell in love with it. And I think it drew me in a way that it was so unique to me and so different that I wanted to try it. So 4th grade started it, and then never turned back after that. But it was a unique experience getting into it and having my family learn about it along the way too.
Excellent. And so Lennie, you're in Silver Springs, Maryland, which is, the Caps are a real deal, but it's not, you're not in Minnesota, you're not in Canada. So I assume this wasn't the obvious sport for a kid in Silver Springs, Maryland.
Definitely not. Definitely not. You could say I probably was a beneficiary of a mass mailer. We had a mailer sent to the house for a hockey camp, and a rink got built 5 miles from our place. And to be honest with you, it was probably, I had parents that were willing to jump outside of the box that said, we're going to do this. We're going to get 3 ice sessions to have you do public skate before we buy you a bunch of gear. Who knows if you're going to be good at it? We're going to throw you out there, and we're going to be a little vulnerable. Right. And that was one thing for me. And then funny for the National Hockey League, the Washington Capitals at one point had Mike Greer, Jason Doig, Anson Carter were all on the same team. So here I am watching the NHL, and I see Black players and being in that space. Is this the norm? I don't know. I didn't feel like I was doing anything different than what I was seeing on TV, and had the parents that were definitely vulnerable and willing to be a little uncomfortable going to a place they've never been in an ice rink, let me pursue my dream and being along with me.
Excellent. Now, Jeff and Meredith, your story is a little different, right? Because as you said, you weren't playing hockey when you were a teen. Well, Meredith was, but so let's start with Meredith, because I think you also have the parent piece. So Meredith, tell me about you. Did you grow up in Minnesota, or where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I remember watching the St. Louis Blues and Brett Hull, and I just thought it was a fascinating sport. It was so fast, but there just wasn't an opportunity really to play hockey there. And then we found out we were moving to Minnesota, and I think, every kid has to pass a hockey test to live here. So I just knew that I wanted to pick up the game in some capacity, but my brother started playing before I did. And he got the opportunity to be in the Mighty Ducks. And I was like, what is happening? How do I get this opportunity? I guess I need to learn how to play hockey. And a girlfriend and I, we knew that we, had no idea how to skate, but we just said, hey, we're gonna try this. And then my freshman year, it became a varsity sport. So the opportunity was there. There was a bus, there was ice time, there was coaches, there was uniforms. So it just made it a lot more accessible. And then my daughter, we were moving to Minnesota from North Carolina, and she said, I want to play hockey. Couple phone calls to old teammates, and she was in hockey by the weekend. So
we can't let that pass. Your brother is in the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, my brother was in the Mighty Ducks, Mighty Ducks 2. He was the goalie for the Trinidad team. So he was, trailblazing way before me.
Excellent. A fine film. I just watched this year for the first time somehow, but a fine movie. A lot of fun. So Jeff, tell me that. So for you, hockey, sort of, how do you come to the game?
Yeah, so it's so interesting, and I love hearing the stories from a player's perspective. And my love for hockey actually came from watching the love develop in my son. And so this was going back 9 years ago. I was overseeing community development for the Brooklyn Nets. And during that particular time period, the New York Islanders were in transition, and they were playing out of Barclays Center. My son was 3, 4 at the time. And we had our first Learn to Skate program. And I was going for work. We're in the heart of Brooklyn, bringing a sport to a community that wasn't familiar with it. And I had my son with me. I threw him out there on the ice just because I needed to keep him busy. Full transparency. I needed to keep him busy while I could handle some work over here. And I look over, and he's, of course, ankle breaking, and he's falling, and he's getting up, he's falling, he's getting up. An hour passes. I'm expecting him to come off the ice crying. I look up, he's still out there. 2 hours go by. Now, anybody, skaters, 2 hours on the ice is a long time. And finally, he comes off the ice, and he's smiling from ear to ear. And he's like, Dad, I love this. I love this. Can I keep playing? Can I keep skating? And so for me, like I mentioned, I'm working in hockey, college football player, stepbrother who played 22 years in the NBA. My dad played in the NFL. Like, we don't know anything about hockey. But I've seen this love, and I'm seeing this passion for my son. And coincidentally, I find myself now working with the Islanders and overseeing community, trying to bridge that gap of hockey within a very, minority community in Brooklyn. And here we are 2 years into it, 3 years into it. Fast forward, I look up, and I'm happy to say my son is a tier 1 AAA hockey player. He actually just won the Boston CCM tournament yesterday. We just got back from Boston, and his love for the game and his passion for it has sparked not only me, because it's now my profession of what I'm able to do with growing the game, but I see what it can do for a family. I see that if you just give a child an opportunity, and you see the doors that it opens for anyone that's given that opportunity to try it, you can't help but love it, and you can't help but respect the discipline, the determination, all of the incremental assets that comes along with playing the game. And I'm hooked, man. And I love when I can have those conversations with family members who may not be as familiar with it, but then they can see the success that's happening on the other end of the spectrum, and then to be able to do it as a profession, it's a blessing, truly a blessing.
So you're going for a BC men's league? What are you thinking? You gonna go for it?
Of course. I do. I skate now. I'm not, but yeah, it's definitely, a true pleasure and a blessing to be a part of it.
Excellent. So, you're all, it's both hockey people and African Americans, right? So, so you've been successful in different aspects of hockey. And I guess I wonder, to what do you attribute that? Sort of, what do you think are the keys to your success? The player, coaches, helping develop other people, league, others. Sort of, what are some of the big keys you think to your success in hockey? And what have been some of the challenges? Anybody want to start off?
I'll take a stab at that one. I think, sports, I think in general, enable you to build a skill set. And I think you learn the most from failures and losing. and how do you come back from a loss when things are going well and you're winning Stanley Cups and all the what have you, things are well. But how do you deal with adversity? And I think a lot of the folks on this call have had to deal with adversity just because they played a game they loved, and often and sometimes their ancestry, to put it politely, could be questioned. You know, an N-word here and there, and you can take that several ways. As a youngster, I didn't take it well, and a lot of time I lashed out, got some match penalties. I was kicking people probably when I shouldn't have. But as I grew as a player and got a little better along the way, I used that to motivate me, because I was no good to my team sitting in the penalty box or being suspended for 30 days. So, and you transfer, if you take a look at that, contrast that with life, right? We all hope to play the game forever, but what do you acquire? You acquire a skill set that teaches you how to deal, number one, with adversity, how to work and collaborate, be a good teammate, in a work ethic. I think those are three traits that are key, that most hockey players will possess and will serve them well throughout life.
Excellent, thanks, Guy. Who was pick up from where Guy was?
Okay.
Challenges, keys to success, Lennie?
Yeah, so for me, it's people in this game, and thinking back to that first time I walked in with my hockey bag that I had no idea what to do with in Silver Spring, Maryland. I walked in, and first person I met was Nelson Burton, who ended up being my coach for the longest time. Nelson was from Nova Scotia, 6'4", big mitts. He was what hockey was, played for the Washington Capitals. And Lennie, how are you? Welcome. It's good to see you. Gave me a big hug. I felt welcomed right away. And, you know, being that you could have those kind of uncomfortable feelings walking into a place that you don't see a lot of your color, to have someone who is hockey at that point, you know, come in and introduce you, you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. You feel like you're in the right place, right? And I definitely feel that from a challenge standpoint. You know, my family did not come from a lot of money, and for us, it definitely was a family decision going all in on these hockey trips. And I was an only child, so thankfully I was. If I had brothers, we wouldn't eat probably. But it was one of those things that was a full family decision, and is a challenge for a lot of families that don't have the financial means to be able to, you know, propel a kid forward. And I was fortunate to have grandparents and parents that really helped me.
Excellent. Yeah, so I'm a hockey dad now. It's ridiculously expensive. It's prohibitive for many people. It's an issue for the game. You know, Lennie, one of the things you said, I just want to sort of pick up on and see if our other panelists want to jump in as well. You talked about that person who, how many years ago was that?
I was 5.5 and 31 now. So
Yeah.
Coach Halgy is our math guy. You know,
Well,
I
like
kinda-
25 years. I'm gonna go 25-ish. So about 25 years ago, somebody did something that he probably didn't plan, and it had an impact on your life. And here you are 25 years later talking about it. And it's this great lesson we think about at the college all the time, is small acts can be the things that change people's lives, and they talk about decades later in the positive or in the negative. So it's really beautiful that he did that and it had an impact, right? So how about others, sort of keys to success, challenges?
I'll jump in. I think for me, it's just leaving hockey better than I found it. You know, when I played many moons ago, there was no players of color that I saw. And so for me, it's just really important, and I'm driven by leaving the game better. You know, how can we create opportunities to have inclusion in the game, but have positive experiences? Because we know if our players have these positive experiences, they're going to want to stay in the game, and they're going to want to give back to the game. And so I need all of the players in Mosaic Hockey Collective to be the coaches, the referees to come, the beer league champions. I need all of those people to come back and give back to the game, and they only do that through positive experiences.
So Meredith, tell us a little more about Mosaic Hockey Collective, if you would. What is it? What do you do?
Yeah, so again, Mosaic Hockey Collective, we have about 80 players of color, boys and girls, right here in Minnesota and some surrounding areas. Lennie, we have some people from Wisconsin, so we're proud about that. And and what we do is really we've understood that our players want development opportunities. They want to know how they can be better at hockey, whatever level that is, and how can we provide resources to bridge that gap. We know that probably 75%, if not 80% of the players in our association or in our organization are first generation hockey players. So they don't have that generational knowledge to know what to be doing in the off season, know how to make the teams, know that, you know, to play summer hockey, you got to try out in, you know, September. Generationally, we just don't know that. So it is just how to, you know, bridge those resources and build a strong community so that we can grow the game.
Excellent, thanks. Olivia, do you have anything to add about sort of challenges, opportunities?
I think Lennie mentioned just the impact people can have, and I think about my family and just the support from them. And I think my mom, I had a conversation with her in the car after one of my games and had a player exchange some words with me and just some racial slurs. And I kind of had a conversation with her about, I never understood that certain players saw that and then paid attention to that I was one of few players of color where I was growing up and playing. And so she just kind of mentioned to me, and the way she framed it still sticks with me today, is just, she said, you know, when you leave the rink and when you walk through the lobby of a rink, everybody will be able to tell who you were in your gear. Like, everybody's going to know what number you were. They're going to know what team you were on if they were watching that game, because you look different. Not everybody looks like you. And she said, so when you walk out of the rink, make sure you played a game that you were proud of. And I loved it. It pushed me. It still drives me. I think that was something that I will always appreciate her for shaping it like that, because I was always proud. I was always proud to walk out of the rink. I was always proud to walk into a rink. I loved the game, and I think anybody who plays it loves it, but that should be enough right there. And so I wanted to show my passion for it and show that it was a space for me and anybody who looked like me. And so I think the people and just those small experiences, and talk about those little sparks that you can have with younger players, or just sparks for us as well. But that was definitely one for me, and definitely pushed me and drives me now to use my platform and have these conversations.
Excellent. Your mom's inspiring me as well. We're gonna have to get her in the locker room as well on campus. So Jeff, I wonder if you talk about your experience. So, you know, you say you work for the NHL. I suspect sometimes people are surprised to hear that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
challenges, opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And to tie it all in, it's unique, because what I was going to say was, one thing that's been so important for me in everything that I've been doing is leading with courage. You know, a lot of times in this space, we are the only, right? Whether you're a parent, and President Harris, I know you empathize and understand this. We walk into rinks and we, in most cases, are the only. Olivia, your experience of you talking about your mother giving you that visual of when you're on the ice or when you're off, when you're walking through, you have to walk and play with courage. And I'll never forget when I was actually resigning from my position with the Brooklyn Nets, and I'm having this conversation with my president, telling him where I was going from the Brooklyn Nets to the New Jersey Devils. He actually says to me, he said, Jeff, are you sure you want to make a transition from the NBA to the NHL? Not many people look like you over at the NHL. And I looked him dead in his face and I said, you know what? That's exactly why I'm making this change. I said, because I understand that there is a purpose and there is a calling for us to have more visibility in this. And as I reflect back on that, I think about that as being courageous. You know, when we're having a lot of these really important conversations with Commissioner Bettman on down about prioritizing what our game activation, the organizations we should support, the programs we should implement, they're non-traditional in a sense where we have to be courageous enough to have those conversations and show why they're important, right? And I'm happy to say that Meredith and the organizations that she's been a part of has enabled us to be able to narrate and tell her story through our Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award, where she was our finalist last year. And I'm so proud and happy to hear about your growth, Meredith, and what you're doing, because it's a testament of your courage to bring and make hockey more welcoming and more inclusive for families. So courage is one of the one of the words that sticks with me, you know, as I navigate through this hockey space, whether it's in a boardroom or whether it's in a locker room with my son. you have to walk with courage. You have to walk with confidence, like you belong, like what being welcomed and feeling a part of this community looks like and feels like. And the more we can do that, then the more we'll see these barriers being broken, and we'll see more people that are more reflective and look like us and so many others, that should have a place in this great game of hockey.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. So, I'm looking at questions. Just remind those in the audience, you can pose a question with the Q&A button there, and we'll get to as many as we can. So both Olivia and Jeff, your comments just now bring up this question that came. And so let me see if anyone wants to comment further on it. So the person writes in, I'm the son of Haitian immigrants who grew up in Montreal. I played junior hockey in Quebec. I've been an assistant and a head coach in New England prep schools for over 20 years. Curious about the microaggressions and aggressions you've dealt with from opponents, fans, and officials in your playing experience and how you handle it. And now Olivia's mom, some great advice and comments, but I wonder if anyone else wants to comment. I would say as a hockey dad, I've learned there's a lot more chatter than I realized, even in youth hockey. I was quite surprised at how much is said and some of what gets said. So I wonder if any of you have any suggestions for maybe the kids out there or others who are thinking about how to handle things if you face them. Maybe you haven't. Anyone?
It's obviously hard to think that might happen. Obviously, it's a reality. And for me, like, number one, I've always, in my experience, I've had some really great teams that whenever there was something said and there's been things said, they had to go through the team. Like, the game stopped. I didn't need to do a word, and my whole team came on the ice and said, find them and end it. There was a specific time, and it was actually in Boston that, we'd won the game and a player had said something through the handshake line, and I kind of caught the tail end of it. My team took care of most of it, but it was something new to me. I didn't see hate me. What's going on? And I went off the ice kind of crying, and my dad actually kind of picked me up. We had a great heart-to-heart in the locker room, and I was kind of hysterical, and he said, calm down. Like, people are going to want to try to get you off your game. That's what it's all about. So it really wasn't them hating you as a person. It was hating what you were going to do to them, what you were doing to them. And they were using that to get against you, to get on your nerves. And at that point in time, I kind of put it away from it being against me. I'm better than you. I'm doing something really good. So I kind of brought that on a little bit, just almost like Olivia said, uses motivation a little bit to do that. But to have that conversation with my dad about, like, this is going to happen in all of life, not just hockey, kind of paved the way for my mindset moving forward.
Excellent. Anyone else want to comment?
Yeah, the microaggressions are real. I mean, my daughter has been a part of, ice arenas that do more than just hockey. They, have a community center, and my daughter would walk in with her hockey bag and her hockey stick, and people would still give her directions to the community center for a birthday party. And she's like, no, I'm here to play hockey. When my daughter was U10, I just know when you talk about microaggressions, it's refereeing the game. And that was really hard for her, because people would basically have to seriously hurt my daughter for there to be penalties called. She would just accidentally, tap them. And she's an aggressive player. I'm not going to lie. Anybody that's watching this knows that she is an aggressive player, but that's her game and that's her skill. And she's doing it in the best way she can. And, she would just get kicked out of games for having 3 penalties and penalties all the time. And when she was a U10 player, she said, Mom, did you see that ref? He's a player of color. Maybe I won't get as many penalties in this game. And for her to recognize that and see that, it just made me realize how important representation is, not only as players, but in all aspects of hockey.
Excellent. Excellent.
I think in conversations about this as well, like, we talk about the moments where we hear things, and I certainly just remember the times where I heard comments and how it makes you feel in the moment, but there's always, I'm sure, the many comments that I didn't hear or that were said in the locker room, and just those conversations there. And I think it's a part of education and learning why you can't say certain things. And I think certainly as a coach, it's something that I think about, but what are the conversations in the locker room? Is a locker room welcoming? How is it at the youth level of being on a club team, and how is that locker room environment for them? And I think there's so many times where maybe we see it and we hear it and there's articles about it, but I think about the many times where we don't, and how those players are impacted. And I've heard of smaller stories just of friends and family that have had things said to them, and they don't even want to play anymore because of it. And I think those are the situations where we need to start to look at how we can start to be more prepared there to deal with those situations, and be prepared to know what conversations to have, how to address players in those times. And like Meredith was saying, you know, what can refs do in those moments, and how are those things being taken care of? And that's a larger conversation, but just thinking about that, I know it's always in the news and in articles about the situations that happen that we catch, but I think there's so many behind the scenes that we don't.
So thanks, Olivia. I'm thinking also, you know, parents, you know, Meredith has a daughter, Jeff has a son, you know, the role of parents, and not just the parents of color, but all of the parents in this, because, you know, Jeff or Meredith, you know, you see your kids doing something in hockey, you know, not racial, you might say like, you know, you might not want to do X, right? And so I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of these little people are part of a larger system, and the system can help them push one way or the other, of course, right? So, hockey parents are a whole nother panel. It's an interesting other. So I wonder if, Jeff, you might help us, but others as well. So what are we doing to make the game more diverse? I mean, what's the NHL doing? I wonder what we're doing in college hockey. We have college coaches. We've heard Meredith some of the things they're doing, and what are we doing to make it easier for more people and a more diverse group of people to fall in love with this game?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very multi-pronged approach, right? And I can be here for the next hour talking about it, but you know, we have to look at it from a holistic approach, from a top-down, bottoms-up approach. And when we talk about diversity of our game, you know, we have to have an internal introspective look and say, how diverse are our organizations, right? We can't preach to our youth hockey organizations and say, you need to be more diverse when, you know, less than 5% of our organizations are diverse, right? We need to have clear representation within that. So we've taken a lot of intentional steps from establishing various councils and committees to prioritize how we're hiring, how we're recruiting, how we're marketing, how we're promoting, who we're partnering up within our game, so that from a business side of it, we are equally as diverse. And then when we think about it from that second tier down, we have to also look at the entire spine of the hockey ecosystem. You know, what type of partnerships are we putting in place with our Players Association, with our Coaches Association, with our Alumni Association, and making sure that they are a part of this journey and a part of this movement with us. Because to Meredith's point about her daughter seeing, you know, a Black official or an official of color, right? That's such an anomaly right now that if we don't have that in place, then we are skipping a step when we talk about the diversity of a game. And then lastly, you know, we really have to think about what are those barriers, you know, for entry? What are those barriers for access? We talk about the expense until we're blue in the face, but when I think about the excuses of expenses, I actually take offense to that as well, because essentially what we're trying to say is that people of color don't have the means to engage in the sport. We are just not choosing to engage in the sport because we haven't made it as culturally available or culturally relevant for us to invest our money into this sport. So we have to think about it from that landscape as well. And then I think it all goes back to representation within our game and how we market it. I'm actually here at Prudential Center right now because tonight is the New Jersey Devils celebration of Black hockey history. And so I have my family here. This was an organization that I was a part of for 6 years. So I'm coming back to support. You know, they're doing some amazing things that are fairly new when we talk about game presentation, right? And how that conversation, that, you know, normalization of, you know, telling stories around the Colored Hockey League, talking about the Black history within the Devils organization, talking about the investment in Black-owned businesses. This organization is really, you know, setting a best practice for that. And it's really it really comes to us as a league making that a priority, you know, and trying to replicate and scale that across all 32 of our teams. So we look at it from, you know, to not be long-winded, from a top-down, bottoms-up approach, right? We want to make sure from our executives we're as diverse and as healthy and intentional with our hiring and our practices, all the way down to our grassroots level, and making sure that we're creating those access points for families to not have an excuse or not feel connected to the game.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Are there programs? I don't know, and people watching me curious to know. I wonder if you or Meredith would know. Are there programs at Bauer, CCM, others, NHL, to try and lower the cost of entry for people who don't yet know? Are there any such programs, or just have to go to Play It Again Sports, I suppose?
Here in Minnesota, we have a great program called Hockey is for Me. So it is to attract underrepresented communities, and it's for Learn to Skates. And then it's like for Little Wild, which are, practices with the equipment. They get all the equipment for free. They get 4 additional practices. So then that's 8 practices that the little ones have had. And then the Wild will give $500 towards their association fee to play for the whole year. So our program is heavily involved with Hockey is for Me. And I do want to piggyback off of what Jeff said about saying that, the gap is that, Blacks or players of color can't afford hockey, and that is definitely not the case. And it's, I would like to say for me, like I'm a single mom and I have a 9-to-5 and I still do, this nonprofit on the side. And so I've been choosing careers and things like that, making those sacrifices for my kid to play hockey. And it's not necessarily monetary that, we can't afford it. It's really more the time is the time investment in hockey is probably the most costly, not necessarily trying to figure out how we can resource and make funds for it to happen.
Absolutely. So I like to joke, they do realize we have to have jobs so we can keep paying for all this stuff, and the trips make it challenging sometimes. So Lennie, Olivia, I wonder at college level, what do you see that from college level or other perspectives you have? What do we need to do to make this sport that more people love and continue to play?
I think just understanding how to address the situations when they come up. I think, again, you see the stories, for example, Michigan State this year versus Ohio State, that situation that came up. I think as coaches, kind of becoming equipped with how we respond in those situations to our players, and also education. And I think that can come even before that situation occurs, of why, as a team and your culture and in the character you want to grow within a team, what does that look like? And I think that's just something that we can pay attention to and kind of drive forward, is how do we respond? How are we responding in those situations? And how does it look for our team? Certainly if it happens to one of your players, how are you responding? How are you comforting them in that moment? How are you providing them support? How are you providing them a platform to talk about what they want to, if they wish to, if they don't, kind of just providing them resources there. And then if it's the other way around, how are you responding there? How are you educating that athlete? What's going to be the next step? I think just letting them continue to play on and kind of go about after an experience like that is definitely not the route to take. Then it's just going to continue to go on. So that's just my perspective of just being ready to respond in those situations, and having a plan and knowing exactly how we want to educate athletes in that experience.
Excellent. Thanks.
I think also, I'm definitely a glass half full type of guy, and as Jeff's doing a phenomenal job, like working on the grassroots. I do want to say it is coming. I'm out recruiting, and it used to be where when I was playing the game, we had a couple Black players on my team. I was fortunate in that, but there was only a few here and there. There's more color on the ice at the youth hockey levels than I've seen before. And that really gets me really excited. It used to be, who's that? Now it's like, whoa, that's awesome, right? So two guys, like parents walking in saying, hey, I'm the only parent, like there's a couple parents out there now. And I think that's what you want to see. And I think that will in turn help grow the game, because as those players develop through the system and the structure, they become now junior hockey players. And those junior hockey players, because they have support of family members and people around and all the great organizations that we've been accustomed to, move them on to college. And now they go through that college career, and what Liv just talked about, having the opportunity to do that, but also if there is some adversity, not to be taken back from that, but moved forward because of the regulations, and also the ability of the commissions to make sure they move on. And then that gets into coaching, where now that we have these players who've gone through that grassroots that Jeff's doing to move into coaches. So I feel like, you know, there are more things to come. But I'm super excited because there are some steps being taken, and I see it right before my own eyes.
Excellent. I wonder, just picking up on what Logan was said, I wonder, can any of you share any positive examples of how coaches have really helped a whole team sort of think about, you know, one for all for one on this issue, or even more generally? I mean, are there positive examples? I mean, how do you do that? Olivia, Lennie, you're coaches, you know, now here at Union. Is that something I assume you have explicit conversations with your players about, you know, you're looking out for each other and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's just building that environment. And certainly I can think back to my college experience. I was surrounded by a team who we loved each other for exactly who we were, and we were going to play for the person next to us and the person before us and everybody who wore the jersey after us. And I think just creating that environment, and I think that's certainly a culture drive within the team. But I think as a coach, outside of the X's and O's and outside of wins and losses, if you can create an environment where your players are sitting across from you their senior year or after they're graduated and can say, I've learned a ton as a person and as an athlete, and I loved the environment I was in. I was pushed, I was educated, I grew a ton. I think that is where the true success comes from. Of course, winning along the way is fun and exciting, and that's the goal. But I think if you can sit across from players and have those conversations after, that's a huge win. And so I think, again, it's a culture piece. It's kind of creating that environment. Lennie, I don't know if you have anything to add on to there that I missed.
Yeah, it was perfect, Liv. And no, for us, like, again, it's that support factor that we, you know, bring to our players. And you know, not to draw another story, but I had a coach in college that a slur was said on the other side of the ice, and he completely almost stopped the game. Like he was more irate, and I was focused on the game. I heard it, and okay, all right, now I'm focused on this, but he stopped the game and made sure that things were right, and, you know, checked in with me multiple times. And I felt so completely backed by my staff. And that's what I think in any color that you want to have, is a backing from your staff through thick, thin, ups, downs. And I think that's something that, you know, I know Liv does, and I definitely want to bring to every college team.
Excellent. So Guy, I've got bad news for you. So given that you and I are at similar age, we're at that age where we're kind of like the history perspective on things. It's hard to believe, Guy. But so some of the questions that came in, I got share. So when you became an assistant coach at Union, it was what, 90, 91, somewhere in that range?
Yeah, 90.
90.
Hung them up in the spring of 90.
So I wonder if you just talk a little, what was it like, you know, moving in and being a coach of color back then and being out on the road recruiting? I mean, was that, you were not many people doing that, look, folks of color, and tell us about that experience.
No, I kind of harkened back thinking, I don't recall seeing another Black coach, and not to suggest there wasn't one, but part of my duties were being on the road. But I never let it inhibit me, right? Grew up in Windsor, pretty diverse city, and you know, grew up, and my mom raised my brothers and I just to treat people the way you want to be treated. And I never let it inhibit me. Now, anecdotal story is, you know, on the phone, I could talk, having played at Union and had a good career and graduated on time. Over the phone, they can't tell I'm a Black guy. We're talking hockey, and their son wants to come to Union College. And, you know, spark up a great conversation, no Zoom, nothing of that nature. But some of the time when I would show up, you know, after the game, the coach maybe hadn't met me yet. I would get Guy. This is kind of funny. I would get Guy right over the phone. It's Guy. But then this brother shows up in the corridor after the game. It's like, oh, that's Guy Logan. Kind of funny. But nevertheless, here again, I did not let my race hold me back. I just wide open, go for it. You know, why not me? Why not at that time? And I encourage all the young players out there now to ask yourself that question. Why not you? Why not now? Okay. And to me, the only thing's inhibiting you is how hard you want to work and how much you want to sacrifice. But really from coaching, but what it did do as I transitioned to go on to work on Wall Street, is it afforded me the ability to develop a skill set. You want to talk about something that's wild in retrospect, looking at this, here I am, just right out of college. I am actually going into the living rooms of most families that don't look like me and pitching to them and them inquiring of me about Union and whether or not they want to have their son attend Union College. Wow, what in hindsight, I look back and say, wow, what a tremendous opportunity to hone those marketing skills, knowing how to ask for the business, so on and so forth, you know, and just bolstering those key skills that I was afforded the ability to develop at Union. You know, that critical thinking, that writing, communication, and the work ethic thing, you know, which I got the work ethic piece from the rink. So it was a tremendous time. But I encourage also any players that may be on listening tonight, however you need to get hockey out of your system, do it. Be it coaching, going to the East Coast League. Some of you may rise out, you know, already be at the top. Go for it. I think it's a wonderful game. You know when it's your time, but you can do it, you know, if you want to sacrifice. And I would just ask any of you, why not you? Why not now?
Excellent. Thanks, Guy. And you got shout outs from old friends out there. So Guy, we're going to getting towards the end of our time. Now I had a preview because we chatted for a few minutes just in advance, and Guy's always fun for thinking about things a little different way. So Guy, I know you came up with something around pucks. So
that's right. So look at, I've here again, I want to say the following. So first of all, thank you again, everyone, for making time for this tremendous event. I'm honored to be a part of it. And as President Harris shared, I've had one of the joys of my life over the last, since 2013 is serving on the Union College Board of Trustees. It's been a tremendous honor. It affords me the opportunity to interact with a lot of good people, and I'm blessed for that. But yes, President Harris is right. I'm always good for an acronym, and I want to try to leave everyone with a little bit of something. And really, the title of the panel is Growing the Game, Expanding Hockey's Horizons. Some of these may be aspirational, but I think it's within the realm, Jeff, as you speak about what the NHL is trying to do from the top down and the bottom up. And Meredith, you set a good example for all of us to grow games. We are ambassadors of the game. No matter where you are, you touch hockey, you're an ambassador. So here's my acronym, and it's PUCks. Our partners can start right at the top. The NHL, the OHL, the Western Hockey League, East Coast Hockey League, Mosaic Hockey, right? Ice Hockey in Harlem, all partners in building this beautiful game, right? To grow this sport. So as we continue on, we need to be undaunted. We all know, having played this game or been involved in it for quite a while, that they're going to be challenging, and there'll be challenges ahead, but that hasn't stopped us now, and it won't stop us now. It hadn't stopped us before, and it won't stop us now. I beg your pardon. Catalyst. We need catalysts. We are catalysts and ambassadors inside the game, but also to pick up the pace of the type of growth that Jeff is talking about. We need external catalysts, folks that maybe don't have the affinity for the game, right? Get them involved. That way we'll pick up the pace, and you'll start to see more black and brown, and the palette across the hockey arenas across the country and the world will change in quick order. And these catalysts can be mentors that can help you along the way, not only in hockey, but in life. This one's tough, the keen part. Keen that we will not waver on being committed to growing the game, okay? Right? We cannot waver. Hockey players, we are not quitters. We will grind it out to the very end, till there's no time left on that clock. We got to be unwavering in this commitment to grow the game. The benefits that accrue are enormous. I alluded to some of them. Being, you know, in my career path, not making it to the NHL, but wow, who would ever thought coming out of Union College, I would help finance some of the arenas around in my day job as an investment banker, financing arenas and convention centers around the countries in hotels. So hockey afforded me that opportunity. And lastly, sponsors and supporters. Economics, we've touched on it a little bit. If you look at the major sports across the gamut, soccer, golf, football, basketball, tennis, what save hockey, golf, and tennis, all those other sports, you will notice that the complexion of these sports has changed over time, right? I live in the South, I live in Georgia. Think about it. Black players could not play in the SEC until Bear Bryant decided, hey, I want to win, right? So make it about the economics, as the NHL is doing. Make it about the economics. This is good for business, right? And something that strikes me to eliminate that as a barrier, set up endowments, encourage those in your respective cities to start an endowment in each of their cities to support hockey, to grow the game. That's the economic side of it. So ultimately, there are ways, obviously, something of that nature is very aspirational. So at the risk of using up too much time, I'll just reiterate, let's all be pucks, be partners, be undaunted, be catalysts, be keen, and let's seek sponsors and supporters. And thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Guy. And it's a great way to wrap. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. I thank all of you for everything you do to make hockey a sport that can be loved by even more people. Olivia, congratulations on your first year at Union College. It was part of a record year here at the Union Women's Program. It's a ton of fun to watch. I think you had 3 overtime wins in in November. It was like in a couple of week period or something. So it was a fantastic year. So thank you for being part of this and being part of the Union family. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it again, and appreciate you guys putting this together and giving us the opportunity to talk about this and creating this platform for us to be able to have these conversations.
Thanks. Lennie, you got a big weekend coming up. It's the final weekend of the regular season, I think, for men's ice hockey. I have that right, don't I?
Spot on.
Yes. I'll be there watching, enjoying. It's been a lot of fun to watch. And so again, love having you as well, especially when we're shorthanded, which hopefully didn't happen too often, but I love watching you out there coaching the players. It's a ton of fun. Thanks for being with us. Guy, always a pleasure. I'll be seeing you at board meetings this week, the rest of the week. Meredith, thanks so much for everything you're doing in Minnesota and with youth. Thanks for being with us.
Sorry, yeah, thanks for having me. And again, thank you so much for this platform to get the word out. And thank you all for the help that you're doing throughout hockey.
So, and Jeff, thanks for everything you're doing at the NHL. It's really cool to know you're there working on these challenges, and it's just a great pleasure. And maybe we'll see your son, talking to him on a panel someday as well. So thanks so much.
You got it. And I'd be remiss not to say, if there's anything that we can do to help you all continue to grow and elevate what you're doing at Union College, of course, please don't hesitate to reach back out, because this is a major step that you and the university are taking, or the college are taking, and we are keen supporters in this movement, and we will be pucks. All right, to your point, guys.
Excellent. And I want to thank everybody who's watching and sending questions for everything you are all doing for hockey, folks of color, folks not of color, folks who experienced lots of things in the past and will now and in the future, and be part of a positive movement. So with that, I wish everyone a wonderful evening. Thanks again to everyone. It's been a lot of fun, and to have a great night.